The purpose of this video is twofold. One, we're going to compare the difference between what Python calls a tuple and a list. And we're going to see how we can use what's called parallel arrays to keep track of associated data, or data that's related to each other. And I'll just give you an example of that. So the first thing I'm going to do is create what Python calls a tuple. And the idea behind a tuple is very similar to a constant. Remember in the beginning of the semester, we created what was called a constant. For example, we said that if we capitalize our variable, it's a naming convention stating that we are creating a variable that doesn't change throughout the course of the program. Pi will always be 3.14. I'm not going to change it, nor can I change it to 2.3. It's always going to be one value. It's never going to change. Well, that's the idea behind a tuple, is that we are creating a sequence of data. So in this case, we're keeping a sequence of strings, and it's never going to change. Mondays, Tuesday, Wednesday, days of the week are always going to be the same. We're never going to need to change Saturday to Friday, for example. It's always going to be the same. And so as a result, it's a tuple, which is immutable. That's a word that's in our Python book, immutable. And all that means is that we can't change it. It's always going to be, just leave that word up there for a moment. It's always going to be these days of the week. And I'll demonstrate immutable in a second. So when we use a tuple, notice that we're putting these in parentheses as opposed to lists, or what I've called arrays. These are all arrays. But we've used lists in past videos, and in lists we would put things in a bracket. But a tuple has parentheses, and let's just look at how this works. So let's loop through our tuple of days of the week and just see if it works. For week in days of week, print. And we've seen this, I need parentheses. We've seen this in past videos. We can loop through a sequence, tuples, the same as we can do with lists, where we can just give a variable that's going to change, very similar to our I when we've looped through I in range. So for every day of the week, every value, that's every element that's in days of the week, put that value in week and print it out. So that's going to change each increment, each iteration. So let's just run that and see if that works. And in fact, it did. So what is this idea of immutable? And tuples are immutable. That doesn't make any sense. Well, let's just try to add a value on to days of week. Remember, to add a value on to an array in Python, we use append. And let's do another day. So the idea here is I want to add another value onto the end of my tuple. So let's try that and see what happens. So if I run it, oh, I got an error. And the error is saying, let's just spread this out back so you can see it. Tuple object has no attribute append. In other words, we can't append to a tuple. It recognizes, Python's recognizing that there's parentheses, which is making this sequence of data a tuple, and it is immutable, which means it doesn't change. So let's look at, and let's further this example. We are going to, well, we can't do this, so let's just get rid of that. Let's compare a tuple to a list. And what I'm going to do is, for every day of the week, I would like to accumulate rainfall. So I want to know how much rainfall we live in maybe Seattle, where it rains all the time. And on Monday, Tuesday, each individual day of the week, I would like to collect the amount of rainfall for that particular day. So I'm going to create what Python calls a list, inches of rainfall. And when we're creating a list, we use it with brackets. And the idea here is that I'm creating an empty list that I'm going to add values to. Lists are mutable, which means I can change it. I can add to it, I can delete it, I can edit it. So that's the difference between a tuple, which has parentheses. I can't make changes to it. And a list, I can make changes to it. I can do add, delete, whatever. Okay, so let's see this in action. So what I'm going to do is intentionally, I'm going to comment this out now because I'm going to do this a different way, and you'll see why in a minute. All right, so this time what I'm going to do is we're going to loop through the days of the week in a different format, and there's a reason why I'm doing this. Well, I suppose we could do it the same way. Okay, so let's do it the same way. So let's, instead of week, let's say print rainfall for, no, I really wanted to generate a point. So let's just do this, sorry. Let's just start again. Okay, there was a reason why I wanted to do it as a for loop. Okay, so I'm going to do it for I in range 0 through 7. And this is to demonstrate a point. We could loop through the tuple this way, but I wanted to do it to demonstrate something different. So what I'm going to do is I'm using I in range 0 to 7. And the idea here, remember, range is up to but not including the last number. So this is going to print a range 0 through 6, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So for each of these elements, I'm going to do something. Let's print rainfall for, and then I'm going to print out each day of the week for days of week of I. Rainfall for days of week. I think that's all I need there. Okay. And so let's just run that and see what the point is. So I should be doing very similar to what we've done before. Rainfall for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Okay. So the next thing I want to do is I need to input what the rainfall is going to be, and I'm going to put that into inches of rainfall. And so I'll put in inches of rainfall dot append. And what am I going to append? I'm just putting the parentheses so I don't forget to open and close them. What I'm going to append is whatever I get from the user. So I'm going to say input, and I'm just going to put an open and a closing string. Because if I don't put anything in that string, I could put in, remember, I could put in something and it'll print that something out. But in our case, I've already printed what I want, our prompt for the user up here. So I can keep my parentheses empty. So at this point, the keyboard waits for the user to put a number in. And that number is going to go into my inches of rainfall list. Because it's a list, it's mutable, so I can append those values. So let's just run that and see what happens. So rainfall for Monday, 10 inches. Why did it print out tuple? It printed out tuple because, why did it print out the word tuple? Rainfall for Tuesday, 20. I think that was something stuck in memory. Let's just run that again because I don't see why that happened. So Control C. Let me try that again. Run. Make sure that it's not an error in my logic. 10. Nope. Okay, there was just something stuck in there. 20, 30, 40, 50. Lots of rain on Saturday. And whoa, 70 inches. I think Noah's on his way. Anyway, so we know that it's receiving values. I'm assuming it is. And that they're being put into a list because that's what I asked it to do here. And we're certainly getting the different Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday by getting at its particular element of I. So hopefully that makes sense. So what I'm going to do now is kind of demonstrate the use of what's called parallel arrays. And the idea here is that, as you notice, when I put in days of the week for 0, days of the week with 0 is Monday, which is associated to the first element that was put into inches of rainfall. So the idea here is that we ran parallel arrays. In other words, 0, days of week of 0 refers to Monday. Inches of rainfall refers to Monday's rain. Days of the week of 1, element 1, is referring to inches of rainfall element 1, which is Tuesday's rainfall. So we run these parallel, and the index numbers are related to each other. 0 is related to 0, 1 is Tuesday's inches of rainfall, etc. And so now what we can do, or what I'm going to do, is I'll do J just for something different in range 0 through 7. So again, I'm going to loop through these arrays, but now since they're parallel, what I can do is, let me just type it out, print rainfall for days of week of J. So if J is 0, days of week of 0 is Monday, and now I'm going to put out the parallel array, inches of rainfall of also J. And so now I'm printing out both values based on the fact that we're on the same element number. And so we've got days of week as so Monday, 0 inches of rainfall for Monday. Let's just see if it works. Okay, so let's run it. Rainfall for Monday, let's just do the same thing just for sequential. And sure enough, let's see, rainfall for Monday is 10, Tuesday is 20, 30, 40, you get the idea. So because we use the same index number for both arrays, we can say that we're using parallel arrays, that the zeros are related, the ones are related, etc. And so that way we can keep track of meaningful data that's associated with each other. So that's the use of parallel arrays. And here we can see the difference then between a tuple, which is in parentheses, which is immutable, and a list, which is mutable, which we've defined using brackets. Which is interesting that we could print this. I just thought of this. It's allowed us to print this with brackets, which looked like it was a mistake on my part, although it was a tuple. Let's see what happens if we run that. Let's just run it. Let's just see what happens. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Let's see if we get an error message by printing that with a 7. Yep. So in order to print out our tuple, good thing I did that on accident, we need that still to be in brackets because we're accessing an element of that tuple. And so we still need the brackets there. But when we created the tuple, it needed to be in parentheses. So now if we run that, that'll work. So in order to get at the element of the tuple, we still need the brackets. The brackets are used to define the list, but when we're defining the tuple, we define it with parentheses. So just a little side note, sometimes it's good to see things, and if you question it, just test it and see if it works or doesn't work. Anyway, so that's tuples versus lists and the use of parallel arrays.